Welcome to another episode of Tales from the Tables with your host, Rob Bradley,
John Charles Ciccarelli,
James Burrows,
and Damien Hallwood.
Well, hello, and welcome to another
greetings. Sorry, I was just very excited to be back. I'm sorry.
Welcome back, buddy.
Welcome back, JC.
Thank you. Very good to be back. That's another episode. What number are we on? What is this, 44?
We're in the mid-40s, absolutely.
Something like that, I think.
Although if we're at 44, I've just said mid-40s. Someone at home listening is like, absolutely, it's not mid-40s. Don't tar me with that brush.
So that's very close, if not accurately, mid-40s. I don't know. Yeah. Well, it's good to see you, gents. How have you been?
Good. Yeah, very good. Very busy. How about
Nice.
you? What have you been up to with your time away from the podcast?
Oh, lots of lovely things. Not away from the podcast though. Unfortunately, last week I was just not feeling well. My voice was pretty shot. It's actually still recovering. So if you hear me crack throughout today's recording, I have no excuse. It's just I've been partying a little too hard lately, I guess. Not really. Not really. I haven't gone to any parties. But yeah, just been keeping busy. Did a couple of Renaissance fairs, went to go visit friends in the cast, and very excitingly, I have some news to share. Or something really cool that happened to me last night and happened to the world last night. So as you all know, I do an improv show in the city. It's called Batsu. And through connections, we also happened to have a group of guests last night, which was a large majority of the cast from the off-Broadway show, Dungeons & Dragons 20-Sided Tavern. However, you may not know this, but this month and a few weeks beforehand, they have been guest starring certain guest stars, including Felicia Day, whom I got to see at a show. She was wonderful. She was very talented. Erika Ishii is coming in,
Nice.
and I think starting this week or maybe next week, and she's got about a week's worth of runs or maybe two. And in between them was Abria Iyengar, who came to our show last night.
Ooh, very
and
nice.
Was one of the most lovely, or one of the loveliest people I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. She was so cool, so down to earth, so friendly. Just loved our show, gave us so much energy, and we gave it right back to her and all of the friends from that show. And it was just a very unique and awesome experience to have her in that intimate space with like a house, I think of 30 or something like that we had. So it was a lot of fun. It was definitely a lot of fun. And we hung out a little bit afterwards. Unfortunately, we didn't go out for drinks or anything, but we stayed around, we chatted, we nerded out about D&D. And yeah, it was a good time. So I'm kind of riding that high right now. And I was afterwards, after I left, I was still pinching myself. I was like, am I dreaming? Was this real life? Did this actually happen? But it was a blast.
Cool.
Yeah. And I was like, I guess, can I talk about this? Can I share this? And then my friend was like, yeah, you're fine to share it on your podcast. You and your, 75 subscribers, we're fine. I was like, great. Okay, cool. So if this ever gets out there, thank you so much once again to the cast of 20-Sided Tavern for visiting, and obviously the legendary Abria Iyengar, who was just lovely and so wonderful to me. But yeah, D&D nerdisms. It's great.
That's very, very cool.
It's so cool. Oh, I really wish like 20-Sided Tavern will come and do a run in the UK for a little bit somewhere, somehow.
I'm sure it has to, because if it's already going on tour and has an Australia run, I'm sure it's going to make its way back to the UK. I believe it got
Australia run.
Yeah, they just announced that not long ago. I want to say that they got their start, and I might be misremembering a little bit of a factoid here, but I know that they were somehow involved at some point with the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. I think they started at the Fringe, but it was people from the States that had originated it. So I'm not 100% sure, but it's gotta at this point. It's gotta come to the West End. And honestly, it's been doing relatively well here in the States. So hopefully that will continue the forward momentum and trajectory of nerdism into every aspect of every life. So we'll see.
I need to try and see that if that does happen. I also next time it's in the UK need to see Batsu.
Yes, you do.
Never had.
We got to get you a guest star up there. That would
be fun.
Oh no! Oh no!
Oh no! What have I done?
Prepare your body for corporeal punishment. That's all I will say. Yeah, for our Japanese inclined listeners, batsu means punishment or penalty in Japanese. So, yeah, all kinds of shenanigans ensue.
I do love shenanigans. So
come to New York for sure.
Man, that would be the ideal. Would be to go to New York. And
I would love to come to New York.
Been twice, once a very short time and once for a week, and I really loved it both times. It was the city, New York City, very touristy, but I still really had a really great time over there.
I've never been. Weirdly, I've been to Boston, so
actually, that was where they caught me out last night. One of the suggestions I got while I was doing the show was to do a Boston accent. Basically, it was a little scene I had to build, and a lot of the cast is very, very kind and supportive, and they know I'm good at doing voices, but I can't for the life of me do a Boston accent. All I could really say was "pack my cat in the yard," and it was just terrible. And it's just everyone immediately was like, "Ooh, yeah, he has no idea." But we made it into a bit, so it was good. But it was still, they were like, "Oh, we found it. The one accent JC can't do." And I was like, "Yeah, well, Boston, lovely place. Can't hold it against them, but their voices."
That's our one Boston listener alienated.
Yep. Sorry. Lovely people.
74 subscribers.
Yep. Exactly. Well, you guys would be welcome anytime. It would be a blast to have you.
Great.
And same for our fearless leader, Rob, which we did not mention is not here today, unfortunately, as he's getting ready for Rolldark Fest. It's coming up this weekend.
This weekend, right?
Yeah. I'm unfortunately not able to make this one. It'll be the first one that I've not been able to get to. So, and somehow JC traveling from the US is making it, and I'm not. But
yeah, well, that's just me having massive FOMO if I don't make it. That's basically the whole impetus.
And of course, be riding the FOMO this weekend. But it's okay. Yeah. I'll be having fun regardless because it's mine and my partner's anniversary. So.
What do you guys have planned?
A spa day on Saturday or a spa evening. Yes. So I intend to be super relaxed, which is the opposite of Rolldark Fest, where I'm always very tense because I'm very self-conscious when I'm DMing.
I'm interested. Have either of you ever done the equivalent of like a spa day in a game of D&D?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have.
Come to think of it, yeah.
I have
really
now, yeah.
Well, there's a spa in Baldur's Gate Descendant to Avernus.
There is. That's one of them. Yeah, that's one of the ones.
Which in the module, it's kind of handled very quickly, down and dirty. You're meant to go there, ask a few questions, and quickly discover a secret entrance that leads you into a hidden lair. But of course, my players immediately were like, spa day. So I fleshed that out, and then I kind of brought it back in a different campaign, a homebrew campaign of mine, where they got to properly enjoy a spa day as well. So, good question. Weird that we have all that in common.
Yeah, just immediately, yes. Mine was a homebrew one, and there was just a criminal element that had set up in a bathhouse over a natural hot spring, and so the party infiltrated that as slowly as humanly possible, I believe, as they intended to make full use of the facilities as they made their way to try and interact with this boss. They're like, yeah, we'll get around to talking to him, but these massage tables are like 5 gold, and we are swimming in it at the moment. So,
I remember doing something similar too. I was like, I think I said, for every minute that you spend soaking in the hot tubs, it's like you gain regeneration 5. So you have 5 hit points coming back to you every minute. And then there was, I want to say there were, what's the devil with, or maybe it's a demon with many arms? Is it a Marilith? Am I
Yes,
misremembering this?
with the serpentine body.
With the serpentine body and the many
and
swords.
Merilith, yeah.
Yeah, I had a Merilith who was giving like shiatsu massages with the branches and the ferns because of the many arms, and I was just thinking they'd be better at it. So
Excellent.
do multiple customers at once.
Very, very cool.
Yeah. Mine was also like a secret lair for a criminal hideout of some sort, or they were meeting some criminal element in there. I think. Yeah. Spas. Who knew?
I think Demon Masseuse as an improv and prompt is fucking great.
That would actually be a really good one. Yeah.
I always like some of the descriptions for I think it's Fortune's Wheel in Sigil, where it talks about some of the spa. Is it in there? I forget. There is mention.
I think you might be right. Yeah.
They have multiversal spas, so there's like lava pits for things like salamanders and stuff to relax in, and
it's amazing.
Ice pools and stuff like that for creatures from sort of a colder climate, and that's a really fun thought experiment to start taking creatures from different locales and thinking what their spa treatment would be.
How do you give a spa treatment to like a rock elemental, like a Galeb Dur or something like that?
Is it like if
gotta
they
dig deep in those nerves, but it's all solid stone?
Or is it just like a gentle chiseling?
Yeah, maybe.
If there's like an outer layer of grime that's built up on them, or like moss, and you just peel that back, you do some gentle chiseling.
But if you want the deep tissue one, they basically just get one of those like construction drills and go.
Yeah. A sandblast. Sort of smooth out the wrinkles and cracks on the skin. Yeah.
we could do this. We could do that. We should put it in our Rolldark Rolldark Marches campaigns.
Absolutely.
Multiversal spa.
If you're on Discord and you've got some ideas for multiversal spa treatments, stick them in the chat. We'd love to hear them.
Yep.
Get a conversation.
Hit us up. Yeah. We'll cover them.
Yeah.
All right.
Do we have news this week?
Yeah, not a huge amount. Sort of probably what you're expecting to be in the news is in the news. But a couple of short mentions before we get there. I mentioned in a previous episode that Hollywood Studios, Universal Studios Hollywood, are doing these Studio Hollywood nights. They're called Universal Fan Fest nights, and they're similar to the Hollywood Horror Nights, but less focused on abject terror. And in this case, they are doing a Dungeons and Dragons themed one. But there was very scarce details on it. There is a little more info on that now. It seems that Universal Studios Hollywood will transform into Waterdeep, and visitors will embark on a Dungeons and Dragons adventure with fellow Harpers to save Waterdeep from Xanathar.
Oh, okay.
That sounds so cool.
Crazy cool.
That sounds so cool.
If they have a full-sized animatronic Xanathar, I'm going to lose my mind that I can't go.
They will. They will.
When is this supposed to come out? When is this happening?
Does it give dates? Let's have a look here. The after event.
Because I need to get my ass over to Universal Studios Hollywood or whatever it is, wherever they're doing this.
Let's have a look here. April and May, I think, but double check that. Okay. They're also doing. They also mentioned they've got a Star Trek themed one, which will feature. Which this hurts me already. The Enterprise D bridge from Picard, which is of course from Next Generation. Well, for the D bridge.
Why does that hurt you?
Because Next Generation, I love Star Trek and I love Next Generation, and to go and stand in the bridge of the Enterprise is like that's
a dream come true. Okay, so then come.
I would love to. And then it says a Harry Potter component will feature an encounter with a Niffler.
Nifflers are cute. They are cute.
Yeah. They are cute. Yeah.
So just a little sort of brief bit of information about what that is to include. I will be checking out footage of this when it has concluded because that sounds incredible.
Nice. Yeah, that's exciting. That honestly, Waterdeep and facing against Xanathar and helping the Harpers, like that sounds so cool. If that's all that we get as a follow up to the D&D movie with Chris Pine, hey, there are worse things,
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. We definitely need a follow up to that,
We
please.
do.
It was so good.
It
So
was.
good.
It hit all the right notes.
There've been like 2 shit D&D movies before that, if not more, that I've bleached from my memory. So
Yeah,
the
they kept
least they
making
could
them.
do. Yeah.
You mean the 2000 masterpiece starring Jeremy Irons?
Yeah,
How
yeah.
dare you?
Hey, look, justice for Snail. I'm there with you, but
Yeah.
So a
Brilliant.
little bit from just merchandise that's coming out for D&D. Of course, we've got our new books inbound over the next few months. We'll get to that. But there is a couple of other little bits. We're getting the Dungeons and Dragons Pocket Expert, which is
Ooh.
a little sort of pocket book that will give information on key locations, magic, monsters, and characters right in your pocket. It sounds like a little bit of a lore document. To me, it sounds a little bit like the lore glossary that they've said is going to be in the Dungeon Master's Guide, a little pocket lore
Okay.
reference, as well as it talks about data files containing info such as classes and skills to allow young readers to compare their favorite heroes and monsters. Helpful guide to factual and lore-based breakdowns of heroes, villains, monsters, and locations, with official artwork to accompany it. So, just a little pocketbook.
that sounds quite cool.
Very cool.
I mean,
Okay.
the comparing of monsters and stuff, so I feel like that's something that's ripe for a Top Trumps set.
Oh yeah,
Surely. Are they still a thing? I've not seen them in a while.
I still see them. Yeah,
You do?
Yeah, I still see them
Okay.
in the supermarkets and things. So yeah,
D&D Top Trumps.
Oh, I see what it's like. It's like like a very like almost like a field guide. It kind of
Yeah.
looks like, with pictures and then a brief blurb of what different monsters and different spells and different factions are. It looks like. Oh, and it actually is as far as I can tell, it looks like it's alphabetical. They cover locations, creatures, characters,
it looks a little bit like if
groups.
any of you have ever
Q&As.
thumbed through or owned the big sort of Marvel and DC encyclopedias.
Yes.
Or they do them for Star Wars as well, where it's just pages and pages of artwork with little paragraphs explaining what each thing is.
Okay.
It's very similar to that.
Cool. Oh, and it's small and relatively inexpensive, I think.
Yeah, and I think it has released as well. Although I'm just looking on Amazon and it says currently unavailable. Oh no, it is.
Yeah, no, I could add it to cart right now. October 8th, 2024 is when it launched. Nice.
A fun little quick reference. We're also getting, and I know we've had these before, I think, but we're getting some new official tabs from WizKids, book tabs to fill your core rulebooks with.
That I'm excited about.
Yes, yeah. They come in both printed and blank versions for each, I think enough for each of the books, each of the core books as well, which is pretty cool. I happen to have my very used player's handbook for 2014 to hand, filled with my own
wow
custom tabs. So I'm very excited.
That's a lot, Damon. That's like what, 24 post-it, no, more than that, like 3 or 4 dozen post-it notes. Jeez.
I tend to do that with most.
Oh wow.
Most books.
Mine's not.
What's
quite
your
that
color
bad.
coding?
I do have a color coding for them. I forget in the instance what they are. For example, when I do adventures, I will do a different color for maps, monster stat blocks, things like that. Equipment and magic items that will have a separate color. So, because a lot of them tend to be spread out throughout the book, rather than it's a bit of a frustration. Some of the books have an appendices with monsters, but then certain stat blocks will only show up somewhere in the adventure.
Right, of course, as that happens. Yeah.
So I'm very, very much looking forward to these. These are releasing in February to coincide presumably with the release of the third and final core book, the Monster Manual. And finally, super cute, we're getting a set of 3D inclusion dice, and the 3D inclusion is a beholder.
Nice.
Ooh.
Set of transparent dice with sort of D&D red numbering on them, and inside is a little miniature beholder inside each of the dice. Very, very cute looking.
I mean,
that is releasing in November.
Nice. They're not as cute as my inclusion dice that have tiny little ducks in them, but yes.
I've seen those.
Well, clearly not. How could we live up to that standard? Jesus.
Exactly. Tiny little ducks are the cutest. What does surprise me, going back to the tabs, is that somehow they are $2 more expensive than the Pocket Expert Guide.
Yeah.
Which is wild to me. But
that a stitched and bound book, regardless of its size, is more expensive than book tabs.
I think it speaks to the confidence level they have in which one will sell more copies.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
There to agree with you. Yep.
Yeah.
That sounds like it.
Not to disparage the pocketbook, because it's a great little resource, but it's I think quite a niche product and more geared towards new players than veteran players.
Yeah.
And GMs.
Sure.
So yeah, I suspect the tabs will probably sell better and more frequently than the pocket guide, but happy to be proven wrong on that. Finally, as is customary for the last few weeks, they are drip feeding news on what is included in the Dungeon Master's Guide, and we've had a couple of key call-outs on what's coming in that book. It does, so far, to me, sound like a really great resource. I'm looking forward to getting my hands on this one.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited.
First and foremost, Bastions. This is a new official stronghold building mechanic that is baked into the Dungeon Master's Guide. It is, as is to be expected from the 5e and the revised 5e as well, a relatively rules-light system, but is absolutely rife for crunching up as much as you would like and making it much more in-depth and detailed. But the sort of skinny on it sounds like it's very much in players' hands as opposed to GM's hands. And I know that GMs are going to react one of two ways to that. But again, you're free to make this your own however you see fit. The basics of it is that you gain access to a bastion at level 5, which I think is a pretty good level for that. It gives you a chance to get into your character a little more, find out who they are. You certainly will have picked your subclass by then and understand a bit more about who your character is. And it's a nice power level to have a home base. So that seems like a sensible level to do so. Bastion turns take place every 7 in-game days, or roughly. So your Bastion actually takes its own turn, which allows it to do one of several things, including craft, empower, harvest, maintain, recruit, research, and trade. And each of those have their own rules and benefits associated with them. And then you can build out your Bastion with 29 special facilities.
This is the cool part to me.
Yeah.
The list.
2 of these at level 5, a 3rd and 4th at level 9, a 5th at level 13, and a 6th at level 17. And the special facilities include, or are, Arcane Study, Armory, Barracks, Garden, Library, Sanctuary, Smithy, Storehouse, Workshop, Game Hall, Greenhouse, Laboratory, Sacristy, is that Sacristy? Scriptorum, Stable, Teleportation Circle, Theatre, Training Room, Trophy Archive, Meditation Chamber, Menagerie, Observatory, Pub, Reliquary, Demiplane, Guildhall, Sanctum, and War Room.
It's like every keep I've ever wanted out of a Skyrim DLC package.
Yes.
You know, where I have just a room for everything.
I also cannot imagine it'll be very long before third parties start coming up with other things to add to your Bastion to like be incorporated into the rest of the Bastion rules.
Absolutely.
I imagine almost
so cool.
Immediately upon release, there'll be stuff in DM's Guild for extra stuff.
Oh, I should hope so.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'm actually incredibly excited for this. I watched the whole video and I was really hoping you guys didn't talk about it on the previous podcast because I was hoping to talk about it now. I have a home game for a long-running group that we just started a new campaign around the premise of having a home base and expanding it into a whole village. So they're taking over an old ruined castle and basically have the task of restoring it and upkeeping it and expanding it and fortifying it, all tied in with the larger adventure. And I checked out the Matt Colville Strongholds and Followers book to see if I could draw some inspiration or use the rules from that, but it was a little too involved and too complex. And I was looking for something a little bit lighter. And I think I really hope, crossing my fingers, that this is that solution, because it sounds like it. What I will tell you, though, is that this shenanigans about only gaining a few every handful of levels, nuh-uh. I'm going to get 30 of those by level 10. I want all those rooms in this keep for them.
Yeah, I can see that being a big change for a lot of people is when you gain access to these things. It sounds like some of them are customizable too. They called out the garden, I think, in the video. And having a guild hall allows you to set up things like an adventurer's guild or a thieves guild. So that's pretty exciting. And as we've mentioned previously, this book is going to come with a lot of trackers. And of course, there will be a Bastion tracker included for you to copy and print many times to keep track of all the things you've got in your Bastion. I can see why they're doing the level thing, but I like you, suspect that a lot of people will change that bit and allow people to build them when, for example, they've got enough gold or have received favors from certain factions and allow them to build on their stronghold. It all sounds like you can actually take your Bastion turns or deal with certain things happening in your Bastion outside of the main sort of playtime as well. So over messages or, around the table at a coffee shop, you can keep this going. Because the idea is that this is not intended to tie your adventurers down to the location where you build your home. You can still go off and explore the multiverse and go on these grand sweeping adventures across different planes of existence and still know roughly what's going on in your Bastion.
While your keep is still producing and
with hirelings and
growing.
Things like that who can do these tasks for you. One thing that you might want to do in your Bastion is craft. And we talked about this, or they talked about this in a separate video, because we've also found out a little bit more about both crafting magic items and magic items in the Dungeon Master's Guide, of which it looks like there are lots. They have added a lot of items to the book. Lots of ones from Xanathar's, was it Xanathar's Guide, that they introduced a lot more uncommon magic items.
Or common magic items.
Or common magic items, because there was not a lot of them in the core DMG.
Yeah, in terms of core DMG, the only common magic items we got were 2 potions, which was a potion of healing and a potion of climbing. And actually, I think the potion of healing is technically PHB. And then it was just cantrip and first level spell scrolls, I think, count as common.
Yeah.
And that's it. It was just potions and scrolls. So we didn't have anything to go off of. And then Xanathar has added a whole bunch.
Yeah.
So now I'm hearing, this is even more.
Into the book. They've added loads more art for magic items, as well as switched up art for some of the ones that already exist. So that's going to be fun to look through a lot of these items and see what they look like. Treasure has themes now. So they're actually grouping treasure into types of treasure. So arcana, gems, relics, implements, and armaments. And one thing that I was really excited that they mentioned in this video, using that system, in the monster manual, monsters will have these tags on their stat blocks to give you an indication of what types of treasure that monster might have at its disposal. So rather than call out specific items, it will have, for example, arcana and relics. So then you can randomly generate or pick from those tables the treasure that this creature has, because it's likely to have that type of thing, which I think is a great idea and something that is similar to things that other systems and previous editions have done, is shown treasure on a monster stat block. And I always find that really useful. So that's a great inclusion.
I think that is a great inclusion, you're right, because it is something that I have struggled with in the past, is making sure that the right things or thematically correct things are in the are on the enemies that you've defeated. And it's if there's a quick reference guide, it'll save so much time.
I love that. Yeah, no, I'm super excited for that too. That sounds like a really cool system. I'm hoping we see more of that.
Interesting. And crafting. So if you've got the player's handbook, you may or may not have already had chance to see that you can craft spell scrolls and potions of healing in the player's handbook. Those rules are already there. Everything else, in terms of crafting magic items, will be in the Dungeon Master's Guide. And you will be able to craft basically any magical item in the Dungeon Master's Guide, as long as it is not an artifact. You can't go and craft your own Eye of Vecna, unfortunately. But any other magical item at the DM's discretion is capable of being crafted.
That's amazing.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Honestly, like what would you sort of see? Like, what would be a good example of this? Like, what kind of magic item would you find, say, I don't know, on a Hydra or something like that? Which I guess could be anything because they eat adventurers. So, but
I was going to say, if in terms of finding magical items on a monster like a Hydra, it would probably be something it had consumed. In fact, in one of my regular games, they did encounter a Hydra, and in its belly was an item, a sort of magic item that was very useful to them in the ongoing adventure. So, funnily enough, that has actually occurred.
I think
James, how are you feeling about all this?
Yeah, I am a big fan, actually.
Awesome.
I think it's great.
Yeah.
I need to put more stuff in the bellies of creatures. I always worry that my players won't dig it out. So I tend to just have the bodies of other previous adventurers laying around, or skeletons that they can pilfer through. Because a Hydra's not going to go through pockets, but they will. So
right. No, I mean, and to satisfy your rogue player, I always feel bad at the end of an encounter. They're like, time for loots. And I'm like, oh, you just fought a wyvern or even something smaller. Like, you just fought something that doesn't normally, take loot. And I struggle for it, but there's a really great third-party resource that I love using, which is Hammond's, I think it's called Hammond's Handy Harvesting Handbook, or Hammond's Harvesting Handbook, I think. And there's different volumes of it that correspond to the Monster Manual, Volo's Guides of Monsters, and Mordenkainen and Stone of Foes. And that gives you a breakdown with inclusion of like extra magic items and what DCs you need to roll to find things and harvest certain monster parts and stuff, which is so much fun. And tells you what they're used for. So, like a harpy's claws are particularly good when ground down. You can make a certain potion with them. Or if you use the spit of the basilisk, it can help create a potion that removes petrification and stuff like that. So I love that resource. But having 3 PDFs up adjacent to all of the other work I have and all the other tabs I have open is usually a kind of a pain. So to have it in a better, slightly more condensed manner would probably be very useful. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it for sure.
In terms of crafting items, it seems to work basically the same as the crafting in the player's handbook for spell scrolls, in that you need to know and have the spell prepared, you need to have the arcana proficiency, and you need to have the appropriate tools, of which they will list which tool proficiencies you need for certain types of magical item. And it all seems fairly simple. The only difference, of course, from item to item will be the cost and how long it takes to make. So very simple, very stripped down, very similar to what they've already done, but slightly expanded. And it sounds like there's going to be a lot of tables in the book for expanding your magical items a little bit. So they talked about the fact that a +1 sword is a +1 sword is a +1 sword. So they give you tables for adding quirks and oddities to those items to make them a little more unique.
Little minor effects, right?
Like, they did have that.
They did. They've made it more prominent, I think.
More prominent.
Yeah, because we don't really. I mean, I know I don't use those as much as I would love to. But now that you mention it, I think I'm going to go dig through my DMG and start doing that with magic items. It's like, here, you find a +1 weapon, but it has this property as well. Something small,
Called out
something big.
a couple of fun examples, like loud, where the magic item spontaneously will make a loud noise when you use it, which is always an amusing one.
Give it to a rogue and just wait for chaos.
Yeah. And then there was, I think it was off-putting. So, for example, the hilt of the weapon might be a wriggling tentacle that you have to hold on to.
That is off-putting.
Gross and off-putting, but how tempting is the item to use, despite the fact that it's really gross?
Isn't there one that makes you less charismatic, or because it is unsettling for others to see it? So if you're holding it, your charisma is slightly reduced.
Yeah, they called that one example of an item that prevents anyone else from taking a short or long rest within a certain distance of you.
Oh yeah!
Whoa!
Crazy
That's
fun.
messed up. Yeah.
So magic items is going to be a huge portion of the book, and it sounds like there is going to be a huge amount of them. And where things were missing, they've tried to put them in, and where things were unclear, it sounds like they've tried to fix that. They've reviewed, according to them, they've reviewed every magic item and tweaked it where necessary.
If they could, on D&D Beyond, make it so that this is a very easy thing to do and update a magical item with from this list of suggestions for effects that they have, that would be incredible, because that would save so much time in going in and manually, painstakingly creating magic items with these details, even if they just number it in the book and on the digital version of the book. So you can say, okay, so it's a +1 longsword with 53, which is wriggling tentacle hilt or something like that. I realise they're not listening, but I'm hoping that by putting it out into the world.
Wriggling tentacle hilt, James. Anything you want to tell us about how you came up with that suggestion off the bat?
No, I wouldn't worry about it. Then do not check my today's story.
What's the tentacled equivalent of a furry or a scaly, I wonder? There's probably a name for it. I don't want to know.
There probably is. I shouldn't look it up.
A wibbly. I don't know.
Oh, God. Isn't that a Wimbledon fan?
Oh, it's actually, just a big fan of the Wombles, actually, the wibbly.
My brain is screaming at me, take your hands away from the keyboard now.
I'd probably make sure that mine are in full view of the camera.
Don't worry. I'll open the incognito tab and do it for us. I'll take that plunge.
And on that terribly gross and that is the end of the news.
Excellent.
Great. This is not
coming
working, you guys. This search is not producing any good results.
We've broken JC.
Oh God.
So does that mean we're going into Tales from the Table? By any chance?
I guess so.
Right.
Straight in.
Oh, right. In a minute. What do we got? I know, Damien, you said you had something, right?
I have something from this week, although I've been talking a lot, so I'm happy to take a second seat to someone else.
Well, I probably should chuck it out there. There's some Rolldark Marches stuff that should be mentioned.
What's the update?
So the update is quite a lot's been happening, but most importantly, next Wednesday there is the first town hall meeting for the villagers of the Rolldark Marches, 7 p.m. till 10 p.m. At which point, at the moment in the Discord, everyone is able to put forward a suggestion for a direction they would like the town to take, or a building or a resource they would like to build or hunt for. So I think we've had a couple of suggestions already. So one of our players wants to sort of improve the docks, so we can start building better ships and potentially a navy to deal with this kraken that they're currently struggling with, as that's reducing their supplies. I can't remember off the top of my head what the other suggestion was, but the way it's going to work is that for every suggestion there can be one counter suggestion from the town, and then one DM suggestion as well as an alternate if there is the space and it makes sense to have one. And then next Wednesday, during the town hall meeting, which will be chaired by, at the moment, just myself and Chris, although all the DMs are welcome to jump in as NPCs, and Damien as well, you. As you expressed an interest in doing so, if you are available. They will then be able to vote on the various things, and that shall begin undertakings. And these will be regular, maybe monthly or bi-monthly, depending on how quickly things get done. So the town is able to spend the resources it gathers over the month. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what our players come up with. I am frantically looking. Yes, there is some laws being proposed as well, as currently it's a very lawless town, and the implementation of a town militia is being proposed. I can see.
Oh boy!
So yes, if you are thinking of joining and would like to have a say, very quickly, almost immediately upon joining the town, you will of course be permitted to do so. So yes,
next Wednesday, 7 p.m.
Yes, so that will be, if I get the date up, the 16th, Wednesday the 16th of October, the first Burnt Oak Town Hall meeting. Yes, and my players this week, my tale from the table is that oh god, this is going to be a weird one. So they created a Trojan pig out of wood and damaged blankets, as something flying was taking away livestock, and so they created a giant wooden pig that they then hid inside.
That they could hide inside. Oh my god!
So the creature that transpired, they used spells to make it smell like pig, and incredible craftsmanship as well with the woodwork that went into creating it. Filled it with straw, so they were comfy, and they had featherfall prepared in case that it was ripped apart midair. But no, the wyvern that it turned out was stealing all the livestock. Picked them up and dutifully carried it back to the mountains. At which point the players sprang out. And managed to defeat the creature, thus saving the town from further livestock loss via wyvern. Anyway, of course, this plan I had not taken into account because I'm sane, and so the session ended up being a little shorter than it would have otherwise been. But I think luckily we managed to get a good deal of stuff out of it. It was very fun. And
Trojan pig. That sounds excellent.
The Trojan. Yeah, well, they are claiming that it's the burnt oak pig because Troy doesn't exist, and so that from now on, anyone in this world who wants to Trojan horse something, it's the burnt oak pig.
The burnt oak pig. So who is their Odysseus? Who came up with this concept and the idea?
I believe this was Jan playing as Rat, with input from Luke playing as Softcakes and Catherine playing as Mistletoe. A rat.
Honestly, that sounds like a Jan thing to
and
do.
A human, yeah.
and Luke definitely contributing to that. Yeah.
Yes,
amazing.
It was. It was massively out of left field, but I did thoroughly enjoy the ingenuity. And then also the moment they realised, so this is a wyvern, it's just picked us up and it's taking us back to its home turf. We see no problem with this plan.
See, James, I don't know why you're not prepared for a wyvern suddenly picking up a Trojan pig or a burnt oak pig. Come on. You don't account for these scenarios in your planning and in your prep? What the heck?
Well, now I will.
You know what I would have done? I'd be like, oh, this is a great idea. Fabulous. And as soon as you are deposited in the mountains, 6 baby wyverns are all cawing and screeching for a little bit of whatever the pig that the mom just brought. Have fun.
Yes. Bye-bye. Yes.
That's beautiful.
Those moments they stick with you for so long. Those spontaneous, didn't realize it was going to happen moments. Actually, therein lies the crux of my tale this week.
Ooh.
If you'll permit me, Monday night is our Odyssey of the Dragon Lords game. Many times Greek myth inspired, and it was a tale of two tones of a session. So the crew are, and I'm not going to be able to do justice to the context required to understand everything that happened over the course of the session. There's too much to go through, but I will do my best to summarize. They are aboard a vessel. They are sailing to the Island of the Fates, because I've said before that the adventure has baked in sub-missions that each of the characters has to undertake. So there is the Haunted one, the Lost one, the Doomed one, the Demigod, and each of them has these sort of subtasks to complete based on their backstory. And a couple of the backstories lead to the Island of the Fates. So they were sailing there, and an NPC who is an oracle, who has a very personal relationship with one of the player's characters, is aboard the vessel. And the session started with her calling this player down to her quarters and just wanted to mention a couple of things pertinent to the fact that they were going to see the Fates. And because she's kind of a self-isolated oracle, this player suggested, well, we're going to have a party on deck tonight. It's a bit of a shindig, bit of a knees up, and you should come. You should come up on deck and be present. Which evolved into a full half-session party involving a huge number of NPCs, including their favorite NPC, who goes by the name of Rouge Fingers, who was my mistake for creating because he was immediately brought on board the vessel. And
obvious with that name,
obviously.
That character was instructed to provide a speech at the beginning of the party. So this schmuck here had to come up with an in-character speech on the fly. And then we had this beautiful, characterful party on the deck of the vessel, using magic to create vines of laurel leaves coiling around the mast and stars drifting around. They were just in the middle of the ocean, so it looked like they were sat in the middle of a three-dimensional sphere of stars because the water was still and the stars were reflecting in the water. They were dancing with characters. They were getting these sort of relationship moments. One of the characters has a weapon who is a nymph that has transformed into a weapon in order to maintain protecting this individual. And somebody suggested partway through the session that some of the more powerful spellcasters on board, to avoid spoilers, could perhaps allow that nymph to dance with that character in some way. And double-checking with the character to make sure they were okay with it, they summoned a column of water out of the ocean onto the deck, which shaped into the form of an approximation of this nymph and danced with this character on the deck of the ship, while at the same time the actual sentient part of that character, still in the weapon, was saying, I'm still here, I'm still in the weapon, but thank you, this means a lot to me.
Whoa.
And then she drifted away. And it was this really beautiful, there was, like I say, there's too much context to go into, but every character, and by extension every player, had a beautiful moment of role-playing. Everyone was on top form. It was full performance all the way through. High stakes, high emotion, and really beautiful by the close of it. The reason I say it was a tale of two tones was because then, in the second half of the session, they went to the Island of the Fates. Can anybody guess what the three fates might be, stat block-wise?
Hags?
Hags.
Yeah, there it is.
Who does not love a hag session? And they arrived on a bleak, rocky, misty and rain-soaked island where only the crows barked and whispered amongst themselves as the players approached. They found a great pool of water with skeletons having attempted to crawl out of it, now bleached and dead, and a yawning dark cave at the other side of that pool with mist drifting over it. This really dark, grim place. And it was great that the tone was so somber and tense, because they had no idea what to expect going in to see the Fates. Very powerful creatures, very legendary creatures, and began speaking and entreating with these Fates. And the Fates know a lot more about them than they know about the Fates, and was using that information to try and coax them into making deals in exchange for the information that they could provide, and also have a great big loom made from the bones of a large creature that they are currently stitching a pictorial representation of the odyssey that the adventurers are on. So when they walk down the stairs into the cave, the character who's most pertinent to meeting the Fates, she descended the stairs with her mechanical bird named Voithos on her arm, to see that they were just stitching an image of an Amazonian warrior descending steps with a mechanical bird on her arm.
Oh,
with
cool.
3 shadows beneath it.
That's always very cool to see it happening in real time.
Yeah. And they ended up making only one deal, which was pertinent to this player's backstory, because they can craft magical items on this loom. And that was kind of the task that this particular player had to achieve, was to craft a magical item on this loom. And so they made one deal, and it became a war of words, as 2 separate players were making negotiations on the terms of this deal. And they agreed that the bard, sort of poet of the group, would write an epic tale about, which would include the Fates, in order that their legend would live way beyond what they could live, even as long-lived as they are. And so they accepted this, and very quickly this player wrote a 3-stanza verse and performed it and said, there you go, it's done, it's finished. And to which the hag replied, wonderful, now we simply have to wait for eternity to see if it lasts. To which she then replied, no,
love hags.
My companion Owen here made that stipulation. My oath that I swore to you never included that. And so it was this seesawing fight between them of war of words, and to which they quickly left at a little quicker pace than they entered. Get out of that cave. And as all hag encounters should, it ended with them not entirely knowing how successful they'd been, and whether or not they really have anything left to owe the hags or not. It was a wonderful session. Thank you all, players that are listening. I know some of you at least do. You were all on top form. Cool. The performances were beautiful. The tone was both melancholy and terrifying, and also beautiful and uplifting. Really all-round great session of D&D. So thank you.
Amazing. Very, very cool. I love that.
That sounds so cool. I really like Greek mythology. I should run.
It's so good.
I should run. I've got the Theros book, and I've taken stuff out of it to use in other games, but I'm not fully committed to the myths and legends side of things, and I really should. I think it'd be really cool.
There's a reason it's so enduring. Of all the there's a lot of mythologies that are very popular. Norse mythology is, of course, very prevalent and popular, and Tolkienized now. But something about Greek myth, it stands.
It's different.
It hits different. Thank you, JC, for bringing me into the cultural zeitgeist.
There you go.
Yeah, so include Greek myth if you can, or any myth.
The concept of the fates, so prevalent and so just ingrained in so many different parts of our culture, the rule of threes and the past, present, and future aspect of it. And I think too, if those of you who have played God of War Ragnarok, when Kratos and his son Atreus go and meet the three, they're not the fates, but they're the Norse equivalent
Norns,
of them.
The
Norns. That's right, the Norns. And how it's a very brief encounter, but how it's similar that they can predict what they're saying and say it with them. It's very, very cool. I love it. And the fact that they're hags, which, if you don't mind, segues me into my tales from the tables, considering I also have hags at any given time. I am probably running a hag encounter somewhere in one of my games. And this is the Spectarium game that I have on Tuesdays mostly now. And a long coming culmination to their encounter with the three hags of the Middenmerk Coven in the swamps. So, as a recap, or if you don't remember, these players have been in the Feywilds tasked with an epic collection of 5 different powerful gems that need to be returned to their place of origin. And one of these gems is held by a coven of greedy hags that have been corrupting and using its power in order to spread their own misery across the Middenmerk swamps, taking this beautiful marshland and fouling it into a fetid bog. And there's a community of druids that are trying to fight back against the corruption, but failing. And my players entered this swamp and ultimately found their way to the hags in the middle of a giant tree stump in the middle of the swamp, where they had carved out a little hole for themselves. And there's 3 of them. There's Tabitha, the Buer hag, Wilhelmina, the green hag, and Morwenna Hemlock, the night hag. And they did something very brilliant. After a very long amount of time, many sessions spent trying to negotiate with these hags and playing their games, and then crawling through their lair and fighting minions, all in an attempt to claim this gem. They finally got to the real gem because they had encountered a few fake ones. And at the roots of this tree stump, buried deep within the swamp. And when they got there, the hags were waiting for them. And the first thing that one of our players said, kudos to Raceland, who recently got his 8 intelligence bumped up to a 19 via a
Wow.
diadem, the headband of intellect, and was capable of role-playing his character intelligently again. He said, and this was something that they had known from the start, that the weakness of the hags is that they don't trust each other. And apart from that, they're very strong, and the gem enhances their coven powers. But in order to have any chance, you have to separate them. And he said, what about if we make deals? But rather than making a deal as a party with any of you, what about each one of you makes a deal with the party separately without the others knowing what you are about to offer, what deal we make? And the hags immediately love this idea. Oh, the potential to deal with the party individually so that they could gain leverage against the other hags, right? Wonderful tactical role play there. And sure enough, they heard out the bargains of the 3 hags, and each time that the hag made a bargain, these, strange requests that had far-flung consequences and seemed terrible, but ultimately they were like, okay, great, thanks so much for your bargain request, we'll take it into consideration. Can you send in the next hag, please? And that hag would go fine and leave, and then the next hag would arrive. And ultimately, they decided to fight rather than accept any of the bargains, but they were only fighting 1 instead of the power of 3. Even so, Morwenna Hemlock, the Night Hag, proved a very formidable adversary. They're only level 5, and this was a Night Hag with effectively lair actions, and legendary actions, and even a few minions that she could summon. And it was an epic 2-session battle. Amongst that, she had prepared a chain lightning spell that she could never quite pull off because they had luckily spread across the layer of the roots of the tree just far enough that they were never really within 30 feet of each other. And I was like, you keep messing up her plans. But she had lots of tricks up her sleeve. And at one point, they were all perfectly lined up for a lightning bolt, which ended up downing 3 of them. And there was a lot of swings, and one of them was banished to a harmless demiplane for a little while Morwenna was taking big hits from the fighter with Action Surge and the paladin who critted on a Divine Smite. So she was looking weak, but for a good 3 rounds of combat, she was sitting at about 25 HP. Literally one fighter turn or a couple of good turns away from death. But then, the wizard tried magic missiling and she cast shield. All this swinging combat, and she had summoned shadows that were downing people. At one point, with those 3 players that had been downed, she had a lair action, which allowed her to shunt people up into the air or across the air, and then they would take either impact or falling damage. And one of them had just rolled a natural 1 on a failed death save.
Oh.
So that meant 2, and any damage would mean permadeath, right? But the players had already acquired the gem. They had ripped it free of the roots of the tree and were holding it. And this is one of those powerful artifacts where they can channel the aspect of a god briefly. It leaves them with a level of exhaustion because mortals aren't meant for such power. But for that time, they had access to all kinds of powerful spells. And their wisdom score got bumped up to 30. So they had and this was a cleric as well. So it was like a plus 20, or it was a 21 spell save DC and like a plus 16 to their spell attacks. It was great. They were loving it, but only for one round. And they used that round to cast Revivify on the fallen, because ultimately, of course, that dragonborn paladin ended up dying when the hag threatened to use that lair action unless that cleric dropped it, and he didn't. And thus, she killed him with that falling damage, but he brought him back with a Revivify, so the whole party survived after finally Morwenna took a killing blow to the rogue's arrow, or crossbow bolt, rather, in a very epic fashion. However, her body disappeared as it struck, and all she left behind was the weapon that she had stolen from the fighter. However, the party then remembered that she had the benefits of one of the cards from the deck of many things that allowed her to cast Wish 1d3 times. So it remains to be seen why her body is not there and what might happen in the future, how she used those 3 wishes, if she's used them. We'll see.
Lovely. I love that.
But it was a great fight. They finally absconded with the gem and escaped the lair. They are probably going to try and go back to rescue a girl that the hags had taken prisoner, a human slave, effectively. But apart from that, it was pretty wild. But
cool.
If I can segue that into yet another tale from the table, and I promise this is my last one, despite having many to choose from, I have to talk about our Monday Vecna Eve of Ruin campaign, because they have wandered into a little bit of a homebrew edition of mine, the Witchlight Carnival. It was because it features as a prominent part of their backstory, and I'm helping the carnival is helping them get to their next location, rather than just, I can suddenly teleport there. They need to do a little bit more work. Mm-hmm. So they got to the Feywilds, which is where the Witchlight Carnival was presently parked. They finally found it. They've been enjoying its frivolities. They entered this absolutely hilarious RP session. It was no combat. It was pure role play, but they wanted to do an eating contest. And in the Witchlight Carnival, there's a cupcake eating contest. But of course, that's designed for low-level characters, typically level 1 or 2. So these are all level 11 characters at this point. So when I realized that the Constitution save was only 10 to prevent, negative effects or the poison condition from eating too many cupcakes, one of the players said, "Do you mind if we spice it up a bit?" And the person who was facilitating the contest said, "Oh, sure, no problem. I've just the thing," and produced these rainbow sprinkles covered in pixie dust and random magical effects, aka the wild magic search table, which bumped up the Constitution saving throw to 15, which they'd have to make once they exceeded a certain number of cupcakes eaten. And I kid you not, this was an elimination round to see who would last the longest. And every time they would fail, they would take custard damage, which affects their actual hit points, but their hit points are returned to them at the end of the whole experience. And for 1 minute, or technically 20 half rounds, because you can eat one cupcake every 3 seconds, so half a round, the players all competed to eat as many cupcakes as they could. But whenever they failed the con save, not only did they take increased custard damage, they also had a random generated effect from the wild magic surge table.
Nice.
Which included shenanigans such as our orc barbarian hitting 0 hit points via custard damage, but then reincarnating into a drow. So that's been fun. Oh gosh, I'm struggling to remember some of the other ridiculous things. Oh, somebody was immune to the effects of alcohol for like 5d6 days. So now they're going to challenge everybody to drinking contests and always win. Many other similar shenanigans. But ultimately, we had two winners. It was a tie, and both of them won a potion of invisibility, which was great. But this was all just a lead up to the Hall of Illusions, which is where they went to go pursue a lead that they had. And as they're in the Hall of Illusions, which, for those of you who don't know, is a giant circus tent filled with mirrors. Obviously, I had to make it a little bit more robust than what the module provides. In the module, the mirrors are enchanted to sort of show you minor spoilers for the very beginning of the Wild Beyond the Witchlight. But the mirrors are enchanted to slowly show you, as you progress further into the tent, what you would look like as you age, right? Mine was more of a greater maze, and it was very bizarre. As they entered the tent, the mirrors functioned. It was very difficult to sort of see around and navigate. They were trying to reach, or they were actually chasing a creature within that they had seen, a very bizarre looking assailant of the carnival. And as they were doing so, the further they got in, the more they realized their reflections were distorted, not just to show differences in ages, but also reverting them to former forms that they had. And also, I described that every time they kind of looked at their reflection in their periphery, they would notice that their other reflections would mimic their movements, but at a delay. So it was always like half a second off or a second off. They would see themselves turn and then turn and turn again. And sometimes they would see other movement that their reflections were doing. But by the time they focused on that reflection, it was all back to normal, and it's just their periphery reflections acting up again. So very bizarre. They had to make several checks to try and navigate without getting lost or confused. Ultimately, they encountered some reflections that stepped out of their respective mirrors. And I'm spoilers, but I kind of made this up on the fly, and I'm really proud of myself. These reflections that kind of spawned outward had all of their abilities, features, weapons, equipment, etc. The only difference was that they had a certain couple of additional features based on the fact that they were mirrors, and certain resistances and vulnerabilities, and a smaller pool of hit points for most of the party. And as this happened, I almost TPK'd that party, folks. It could have easily been a TPK. Their own power against them was proving so powerful. But the best part about all of this was interacting with the player characters as the player characters, because their mirror shades weren't just reflections. They were effectively copies. And the way that they spoke to each other was me impersonating their character choices. And we have a very strong group of role players. We mentioned Luke earlier from Rolldark Marches. He's playing a sort of a Southern belle who has this sweet overtone, and she didn't feel that the reflection didn't feel like fighting. They just wanted to kind of get along and flirt with their other self, their real self. So the whole time in combat, they were just going, "Oh, my dear, why don't we just give a little bardic inspiration, the two of us?" And then Luke would respond, "Oh, that sounds such a great idea. Let's do it." And I'm not doing it justice because Luke does it much better, but it was just so much fun. And then the orc barbarian was like super confused because he has a low intelligence character, and the player who plays him, Greg, also plays him fantastically. Role plays a very like, "Who am I supposed to hit? I don't understand." But at that point, he was a drow, so he was affecting a drow voice as well. And then the reflection would be like, "I don't know. You pick one. I'm confused." And it was just a lot of that. But it would have been a near TPK had they all actually intended to try and down the party. But ultimately, they won. They just about finished the encounter, and that's where we left off with them shattering their mirrored reflections. And I'm looking forward to continuing next time. Yeah. So sorry for the long-winded stories, but that is, I felt like it was worth sharing because I hope it inspires you to add some doppelgangers or mirror shades or whatever you want to do into your own campaigns.
Oh yeah.
If you want to
100%.
prove how
Oh,
powerful
yeah.
player characters are in comparison to monsters, just have
Yep.
them fight each other, and you soon
Yep.
find out that.
Well, and that was the whole thing. The primary aggressor was the fighter's reflection or the mirror shade of the fighter. And the fighter had 20 AC and I don't know, something well over 100 hit points at level 11. And that fighter got downed, the real fighter, not the mirror reflection, got downed in like the first turn and a half. And then it was a whole thing about whom do we heal? Is which reflection or which fighter is which, you know? It was unbelievable. And nobody could hit him. Nobody could hit the mirror reflection. 20 AC. They only got lucky a few times, you know? It was crazy. So a lot of fun though. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. So
Cool.
I think we're done. Another episode of Tales from the Table under our belts.
Very cool.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, we'll hope to see you all in our games
next
in the coming week. Yeah.
Yep. Wednesday, show up to the town meeting if you're in Rolldark Marches, I guess.
Yes, absolutely.
Try and make that.
It is a must. Have your say. Be able to vote. I'm sure we should probably put some campaign posters up. Your vote. We want your vote.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cool. Awesome, folks. Thanks for listening.
Pleasure.
We'll catch you next time.
Thank you very much. Bye.